Hi grade 7, how's it going? It's Mr. Aaron here with another day of online learning. Welcome to Teams. Today we're going to be looking at a PowerPoint of the people called the Abenaki. They were the Native Americans, meaning the people who lived in what is America before people arrived from Europe. So they were many tribes in North America, and those people lived off the land. Now they didn't have a system of writing, so all the stories and everything they knew, they would tell verbally, or we call it oral storytelling, and that was passed down from generation to generation. So now, if you go into your Teams, now by the way, there's a new Teams that will be created for you. There's a new English team. So this will be posted on that one as well. But if you're in your Teams and you click right here where it says Abenaki Tribe Intro, you'll find a PowerPoint on it. And I'm going to walk through the PowerPoint with you today. So let's make it larger. Okay, so you see here's this idea of what Native American would look like back then. All right, using natural resources. Natural resources, what do we mean by that? Anybody know? Natural resources. If you have a notebook, copy this down. Write down the words natural resources. You can pause this video and go back to it. Natural resources are the resources available to the people from the land. So if they lived in a forest, they would have the resources of the forest, the trees to make their houses, or logging, any type of animals and plants and berries that are available in the forest. If they live by the ocean, the same thing, they have resources available to them from the ocean. So they lived in an area called New Hampshire, which is in the northeast part of the United States, where it's very cold. So then they lived very well on the resources around them. This is way before the Europeans arrived. So let's take a look at this picture. This is what their home looked like. What resources do you think were available to them? Where do you think they got their food? Well, if you said fishing, you're right. So if you included hunting and fishing, definitely. Here you see an Indian catching fish with the aid of what's called a weir and a spear. So Native Americans, they fashioned other tools for fishing. They had nets, plummets, and they attached these to the fishing line. They put them below the surface and they caught a fish. Hunting also. So here's an example, a painting of an Indian hunting camp. So animals of the field and the forest were a big natural resource for these people. Hunting and stalking were exhausting, though. It's very difficult. Exhausting means it makes you tired. So it required great strength and skill. There are also gatherers. Now, while men hunted and fished, what would the women do? So this is called gender role. So you have the role of the man, the role of the woman inside the community. So the women gathered the region's resources: berries, nuts, herbs, growing also. In areas where it was a little warmer, times of the year where it was warmer, the women could grow crops, agriculture. So corn, beans, squash. They called these the Three Sisters. They made up a very important part of their food. So the Abenaki were skillful at using resources for more than hunting and fishing and gathering and growing. Shelter. So these are the types of houses that they would create. So they would use the wood and the resources from the forest to create their houses. And here is what's called a wigwam. So if you remember Old Man Winter, he was in his wigwam from the story, right? Well, that's this. This is a picture of a wigwam. Same as this. So now when we read the story and you see the word wigwam, you know what it is. Food preparation. This is how they prepared food. So if they had nuts, grains, or any type of food that needed to be ground, this is what they would do. They would put it in here and they would mash it in. Storage. So here are baskets that they would store their food in, resources, supplies. And these two baskets are distinctive Abenaki designs. Transportation. So they were skilled in the water. With they made canoes like this. And these are the types of shoes that they had. They made their shoes that looked just like that. So basically the Indians in this area of the United States, in New Hampshire, they were what you call self-sufficient, meaning they gave everything they needed, they found or made for themselves. So they used the woods and the waters with tools, and they even had little small things for toys for the kids. But all of this changed when the first Europeans came. So the arrival of the European traders and shelters in the 1600s, now this is over 400 years ago, brought many changes to the Native Americans. So some of the immediate changes were they obviously their customs, the way they dressed, the way they acted, everything. Here's what contact might have looked like. And trade. So the Europeans, they had things they brought with them, and so did the Native Americans, and so they traded. So Indians could supply what? Fish, furs, forest products. And Europeans could bring clothing and metal. This was a big deal. These Native Americans didn't have anything made of metal, and also beads. But not all was good. In fact, the Abenaki's way of life was going to disappear. It was doomed for many reasons. One, a war broke out between England and France. Then more and more English settlers came, and they had different ideas on how you owned the land. To the Native Americans, everybody lived off the land, but to the English, they, similar to today, they had, well, this is my house, that's your house, this is my area, my land, you can't come on it. And that was very different from their way of life. And then what you ended up having was the Abenaki grew dependent on the European goods and then European diseases. So think of this pandemic, this coronavirus. It was very similar to the Native Americans. The Europeans brought diseases with them, and unfortunately, many tribes just didn't survive. But the Abenaki did live on. In fact, there are still descendants of the original tribes today. And this is the area where they live. So here is the northeast part of the United States. Here's Canada and Quebec. So you see Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Quebec. And some still live among us today. And so the Abenaki today, some Native Americans are working to preserve the knowledge and skills of their ancestors. So they do traditional type of activities. And they have craftsmen that make crafts. It's almost like the UAE, how the UAE has changed so much from, let's say, even 50 years ago, but those traditions are still passed down. They're still alive today. That's similar to the Abenaki. So, that's it. It's just a short presentation on the Abenaki tribe, and so now when we do our reading of Gluskabe and Old Man Winter, I think it will be a little more interesting and make a little more sense to you. All right? Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Thank you.